It's been 20 years since I started cross-dressing. Yeah, 20 years. I know what you're thinking, and yes, you're right. It's exactly what it sounds like. And my best friend, the guy who's been by my side through everything, had no idea. But last month, I decided it was time to open this chapter of my life. Time to tell him the truth. Now, if you're thinking this is going to be one of those tragic coming-out stories where friendship dies and hearts break, well, you're half right. Hearts did break. Just not the way you'd expect. Because what happened when I finally told him what he said, what he did, it shattered every assumption I had about masculinity, friendship, and what it means to truly know someone. This is that story. And I'm warning you now, if you think you know how this ends, you don't. Let me paint you a picture of Jake and me. We met in 2nd grade when he punched Big Tommy for stealing my Pokemon cards. That was Jake, my defender, my partner in crime, my brother from another mother. We did everything together. Sleepovers where we'd stay up until 3 a.m. playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, getting detention for putting saran wrap on the teacher's toilet seat. Yes, we were those kids. In high school, we started a terrible garage band called Acoustic Chaos. I played bass, he played guitar, and we both played terribly. College was supposed to split us up, but we ended up at schools just 2 hours apart. Every weekend, one of us was driving to see the other. We dated girls from the same friend groups, went to each other's family barbecues, shared streaming passwords before that was even a thing. And then came the wedding. March 15th, 2019. Jake asked me to be his best man, and I ugly cried right there in his living room. Not because I was happy for him, I was, but because in that moment I realized this guy saw me as family, real family. The speech I gave at his wedding, God, it was awful. I rambled for 8 minutes about friendship and loyalty, and how Jake was the kind of person who'd help you move a couch at 2 a.m. Everyone laughed. Sarah, his wife, cried, and Jake hugged me so tight I thought he'd crack my ribs. 20 years of friendship. 20 years of inside jokes, shared secrets, and unconditional support. He knew everything about me. My worst breakups, my family drama, my weird obsession with fashion podcasts. Everything except the most important thing. See, while Jake and I were building this incredible friendship, I was building something else entirely. A secret life that started when I was 12 years old. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Mom was at work. Dad was traveling for business, and I was home alone. A dangerous combination for any curious kid. I wandered into my parents' bedroom, just snooping around like kids do, and there it was. Mom's makeup bag, sitting on her dresser like it was calling to me. I picked up this tube of lipstick, rose petal pink. I still remember the name. And I looked at myself in the mirror. Just looked. And then I applied it. Badly, obviously. I looked like I'd been attacked by a flamingo, but something about it felt right. From that day on, whenever I was alone, I'd experiment. A little makeup here, trying on Mom's clothes there. By high school, I'd figured out my sizes, learned how to do basic makeup from YouTube tutorials, and had a small collection hidden in a shoebox under my bed. For me, cross-dressing was this creative expression, this way of exploring a different side of myself. It was art. It was play. It was freedom. College gave me more privacy, more opportunities. I'd set aside nights when my roommate was out, transform completely, and just exist. Take photos, watch movies, dance around my dorm room to music. It sounds silly, but those moments felt like the most authentic version of myself. But here's the thing. The more comfortable I got with this side of myself, the more terrified I became of anyone finding out. Especially Jake. Because Jake was the most traditionally masculine guy the first knew. Sports, beer, the whole thing. And I kept thinking, if he knew about this, would he still see me as his best friend? Or would I become some weird curiosity? Some secret he'd have to keep from Sarah and his other friends? So I carried this secret for 20 years. 20 years of quick outfit changes when he'd show up unexpectedly. 20 years of hiding packages from online shopping. 20 years of living this double life where my best friend knew everything about me except the thing that mattered most. But what happened next would change everything. Last year, something changed. Maybe it was turning 30. Maybe it was watching Jake become a dad and seeing how he talked to his daughter about being true to herself. Maybe it was just exhaustion from keeping such a big secret. I was getting dressed one evening, full makeup, this gorgeous red dress I'd ordered online, heels that actually fit, and I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, this is me. This is actually me. And my best friend has no idea who I really am. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all our conversations about authenticity, about living your truth, about how we'd always promised to be real with each other. And here I was, hiding this massive part of myself from the person I trusted most in the world. The next morning, Jake texted me some meme about friendship, and I stared at that text for probably 20 minutes. This guy who'd been there through everything, my parents' divorce, my quarter-life crisis, my grandmother's funeral, and I was lying to him every single day just by not telling him this one thing. That's when I decided. It was time. Time to tell him. Time to risk everything for the chance at real, complete honesty. The only problem? I had absolutely no idea how to do it. And what I tried next was a complete disaster. Okay, so how do you tell your straight, masculine best friend that you've been cross-dressing for 2 decades? There's no Hallmark card for that conversation. I spent weeks researching online. Forums, threads, online videos about coming out to friends. I read every article about how to tell someone your secret and maintaining friendships through big revelations. I even bought a book called Difficult Conversations and highlighted it like I was studying for the SATs. I planned it out a dozen different ways. Maybe I'd do it during one of our weekend hangouts. Just slip it into conversation between talking about sports and complaining about work. Hey, pass the beer. And by the way, I cross-dress. Casual, right? Wrong. Every time I got close, my throat would close up. Then I thought maybe I'd write him a letter. You know, something thoughtful and carefully worded that he could process on his own time. I wrote 17 drafts. 17. They ranged from overly clinical, like a Wikipedia article about cross-dressing, to embarrassingly emotional. One draft was literally just, Jake, I dress like a woman sometimes, please don't hate me, written in crayon. I was losing it. I tried calling him 3 different times with the intention of just blurting it out. First call, hey man, what's up? Oh, just, hey, how's Sarah? Chickened out immediately. Second call, I got as far as, Jake, there's something I need to tell you about myself, and then I panicked and said I was calling about fantasy football. Fantasy football. It wasn't even football season. By week 3 of this torture, I was desperate. I couldn't do it face-to-face, I couldn't do it in writing, I couldn't do it over a regular phone call. That's when I remembered. Voice notes. Jake and I sent voice notes all the time. Random thoughts, funny stories, dumb jokes. It was personal but not immediate. Perfect. How hard could it be? What happened next was 4 hours of pure chaos. Picture this. Saturday night, 9 p.m. Sarah's taking the baby to her mom's for the weekend, so Jake's having a guy's night. Perfect timing. He'll get the message, have time to process, and we can talk about it Sunday. I've got my phone charged, I'm in my bedroom, door locked, and I'm ready to record the most important voice note of my life. Take 1. Hey Jake, it's me. So, there's something I've been meaning to tell you, and it's kind of a big deal, and I hope you don't think less of me, but delete. I sounded like I was about to confess to murder. Take 2. Too casual. I started with, what's good, bro? Like I was about to ask him to pick up milk from the store. Take 3. Too formal. I began with Jacob. I never call him Jacob unless someone's died. Take 4. I started crying 30 seconds in. Take 5. I accidentally started the whole thing in Spanish. I don't even speak Spanish fluently. Take 6 through 10, I decided I needed context. Historical context. I started with ancient Rome and gender expression. Jake was getting a full anthropology lesson before I got to my point. Take 8, I quoted Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou. About cross-dressing. I know why the caged bird sings, Jake. And that bird is me in a dress. What was wrong with me? By this point, it's 2 a.m. I'm exhausted, emotionally drained, and running on pure desperation. I sat on my bed, looked at my reflection in my phone screen, and just started talking. No script, no plan, just honesty. I told him about being 12 and trying on mom's lipstick, about hiding this part of myself through high school and college, about the joy I found in expressing myself this way, and the fear I'd carried about losing people I loved. I told him that he was the most important person in my life, and that's exactly why this was so terrifying. I told him I needed him to know all of me, not just the parts one thought he'd approve of. The recording was 4 minutes and 37 seconds. I listened to it once, closed my eyes, and hit send before I could change my mind. The second I saw that little delivered notification, I wanted to throw my phone across the room. There was no taking it back. 20 years of friendship hanging in the balance because of 4 minutes and 37 seconds of audio. But his response? It took 3 days, and it wasn't what I expected. You know what's worse than sending a life-changing voice note to your best friend at 2 a.m.? Waiting for him to hear it. Sunday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. and immediately checked my phone. Nothing. No response, no seen, notification, nothing. I told myself he was probably still asleep. Jake's not a morning person. By noon, still nothing. By evening, I was starting to panic. I checked every 30 seconds. I memorized the exact time the message was sent, calculated how long it had been since delivery, analyzed whether his last seen time meant he'd heard it yet. I became a detective in my own anxiety. Monday was worse. I knew Jake was at work, but he always checked his phone during lunch. His lunch break came and went. Still no response. I started crafting follow-up messages. Hey, just wanted to make sure you got my voice note. Delete. No pressure on responding to that thing I sent. Delete. Please don't hate me. Delete, delete, delete. My brain started creating scenarios. Maybe he was so shocked he needed time to process. Maybe he was talking to Sarah about it. Maybe he was researching what cross-dressing meant. Or maybe, and this was the thought that kept me up at night, maybe he was figuring out how to let me down easy. How to end 20 years of friendship without seeming like the bad guy. I started planning for the worst. Maybe I'd have to find new friends. Maybe I'd have to skip his kids' birthday parties. Maybe 20 years of friendship was just over because I couldn't keep this one secret to myself. And that's when it hit me. I'd spent so much energy over the years imagining how Jake would react to this revelation that I'd never actually given him the chance to react. I'd scripted his response in my head, decided he'd reject me, and now I was living in that imaginary rejection before I even knew what his real response would be. And then, Wednesday evening, just as I was settling into my third straight day of misery, I heard a knock at my door. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about friendship. Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. I'm in my pajamas, looking like I haven't slept in days, which I hadn't, when I hear 3 firm knocks on my door. Not the doorbell. Knocks. Jake knocks. My first thought wasn't relief or excitement. It was pure terror. He was here to end our friendship in person. He was here to tell me he needed space, or that Sarah was uncomfortable, or that he'd never see me the same way. He was here to collect the spare key he'd given me and erase 20 years of brotherhood. I walked to the door like I was walking to my own execution. Each step felt heavier than the last. I could see his silhouette through the frosted glass, just standing there, waiting. I put my hand on the doorknob and took the deepest breath of my life. I opened the door, and there he was. Jake. My best friend Jake, standing on my porch with his hands in his pockets, looking. I couldn't read his expression. It wasn't anger, but it wasn't his usual smile either. We just looked at each other for what felt like an eternity. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched on, and I could hear my heart beat in my ears. This was it. This was the moment that would define whether I still had a best friend or whether I just learned the most expensive lesson of my life about keeping secrets. Finally, Jake shifted his weight and said, "So, we gonna talk about this? Or are you gonna make me stand on your porch all night?" I stepped aside and let him in, still not sure if this was going to be a conversation or a funeral for our friendship. He walked into my living room like he had 1,000 times before, but everything felt different. Charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Jake sat down on my couch and patted the cushion next to him. "Sit down, man. You look like you're about to pass out." So I sat, leaving about 3 feet between us. More space than we'd ever needed before. He was quiet for another moment, then he started laughing. Not cruel laughter, just this soft, almost relieved chuckle. "Dude," he said, "you had me worried. I thought you were going to tell me you were dying or something." But what he said next completely rewrote 20 years of fear. I started to respond, but he held up his hand. "Let me go first," he said. "I listened to your voice note on Sunday." Yeah, Sunday. "And I've spent the last 3 days trying to figure out what to say, not because I was upset, but because I wanted to get it right." Firm eyes. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Here's the thing, and I need you to really hear this. Nothing about how I see you has changed. Nothing. You're still the guy who punched Billy Henderson in 8th grade for making fun of my stutter. You're still the guy who drove 4 hours to help me move into my first apartment. You're still the guy who cried harder than I did at my wedding. But you know what?" he continued. "I'm actually kind of pissed at you." My stomach dropped. Here it comes, I thought. "I'm pissed that you thought so little of our friendship that you believed I'd dump you over this. I'm pissed that you've been carrying this alone for 20 years when you could have been sharing it with me." And then Jake did something he'd never done in 20 years of friendship. He got emotional. His voice cracked a little when he said, "Do you know how it feels to find out that your best friend didn't trust you with something this important? Not because you're a bad friend, but because you thought I was too much of a close-minded asshole to handle it?" That's when I finally found my voice. "Jake, it wasn't about trusting you. It was about being terrified of losing you. You're the most important person in my life, and I couldn't bear the thought of you seeing me differently." He looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Part frustration, part love, part big brother protectiveness. "You idiot," he said, and I could hear him smiling. "The only way you could lose me is if you kept lying to me. This This doesn't change who you are to me. This just means I get to know all of who you are. And then Jake said something that completely rewrote 20 years of fear in a single sentence. Besides, Sarah always said you had better fashion sense than both of us combined. Now I know why. I started laughing and crying at the same time. You know that weird thing where you can't tell if you're having a breakdown or a breakthrough? Jake pulled me into one of his signature bone-crushing hugs and said, "We're good, man. We're better than good. We're honest now." That conversation happened 6 months ago, and everything changed. Not in the way I'd feared. Our friendship didn't end or become weird or awkward. It deepened. It became more real, more complete. Jake now gets texts from me about makeup sales and outfit choices. He's become surprisingly knowledgeable about color theory and the difference between contouring and highlighting. When I sent him a photo of a new dress I'd bought, he responded with, "That color is perfect for you, but are you sure about those shoes?" The man has opinions about my fashion choices now. He told Sarah the next day, with my permission, and her reaction was even better than his. She immediately started sending me links to sales at Sephora and invited me to go dress shopping with her. Finally, she said, someone who will actually enjoy this as much as I do, Sulaikolesti. But the biggest change? I stopped living a double life. I stopped hiding packages, stopped quick changing when he came over, stopped carefully editing my stories to remove any hint of this part of myself. For the first time in 20 years, I could be completely myself around the person who mattered most. Here's what I learned. I spent 2 decades writing Jake's reaction for him. I decided he'd reject me without ever giving him the chance to surprise me. I created this entire narrative about how he'd respond based on my fears, not on his actual character or our actual friendship. How many of us do that? How many of us script other people's responses based on our worst-case scenarios instead of trusting the people who've already proven they love us? How many friendships, relationships, and connections do we damage not through honesty, but through our assumptions about how others will handle our honesty? Real friendship isn't about hiding who you are to keep someone comfortable. It's about trusting the people who matter to see you fully and love you anyway. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, they surprise you by loving you not just anyway, but because of your honesty, your vulnerability, your trust in them. If you're sitting on something you're scared to share with someone who matters to you, I can't promise they'll react like Jake did. But I can promise this. Living a partial truth with someone you love is more exhausting than living an honest life with the right people. Jake was right about one thing. The only way I could have lost him was by continuing to lie. Honesty didn't cost me my best friend. It gave me back 20 years of authentic friendship I'd never actually had. What about you? Ever hyped yourself up for the worst only to discover reality was completely different? Or maybe you're carrying something right now that feels too big to share? Drop your story in the comments. Let's laugh at our fears together, and maybe help each other get brave. And if you want more stories about the gap between our fears and reality, hit subscribe. Trust me, I've got plenty more where this came from. The end.
The Gender Diary exists to light that path with shared stories. Whether you found connection in this narrative, you're on your own journey of gender exploration, or you're here seeking understanding, your subscription fuels our mission. Every subscriber empowers us to keep illuminating these authentic experiences for our community. Kindly drop a comment below. Your voice adds to the tapestry of experiences that makes this space meaningful. Until our next story unfolds.